Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and it's Friday, January 10th. It's time for my wildcard picks, along with playoff bracket and Super Bowl prediction for this season's playoff picture. But it is Friday. I wanted to get this video out earlier in the week. However, because of the fires in my surrounding area, I live in Southern California, I could not. Thankfully, I'm safe. My home is still intact. But on Tuesday, I lost power, as I assume it was a precautionary measure by the city. And then it was restored on Wednesday night, but I was sleeping at my sister's. It was a rough day, not quite knowing if we'd have to evacuate or not. We just played it safe. And then on Thursday, my Wi-Fi came back. I returned home and I started to unpack, started to feel like maybe I could relax. But I did get a notification yesterday. It was time to evacuate, and I started to repack. I got really stressed out. About 15 minutes later, I was informed that was sent in error, and thankfully, I am okay. It appears that the nearest fire is somewhat extinguished at this point. It's getting a lot closer to being over, but there's been so many people whose lives have been devastated by this tragedy. I know a lot of people from high school who have lost their homes. Altadena is essentially one of my neighborhoods growing up. I went to school in East Pasadena, and Altadena is right between where I live and that school. And some of my classmates from back in the day are not as lucky as I am. So because I have this platform, because I have the opportunity to reach out, if you resonate with this story, if you feel the urge to donate and you'd like to do so, please don't donate to me through the channel. That is not the way to do it. I left a link in the description. I'm going to pin it in the comments as well. It takes you to a spreadsheet that has a bunch of links over hundreds of families who have lost their homes. If you can donate, if you'd like to donate, please donate using those links directly to those people. They need it most. I am okay. And if you donate to me on the channel, I'll happily send it over to them, but YouTube does take a cut. So to avoid any middlemen, please donate directly. There are many links, many families who need your help. And if you would like to, if you can, please go ahead and donate through the link in the description and find a GoFundMe that you feel comfortable giving your hard-earned money to. Don't give it to me. Don't give it to YouTube. Give it to them directly. Please, that is my request. If you would like to donate in this dire time, please do it that way. Or if there's a solid organization you feel comfortable donating with yourself, if you've done research with it, go ahead and do that. Anything to help would be appreciated. Even if you just share the link for the sake of exposure, that is the least I think anyone can do in this situation. So with this opportunity, I wanted to make sure I got that link out there, and that is where most of my focus has been this week. I've been trying to stay safe, but it's pretty nerve-wracking to know that just miles away, you could lose everything. So really tough time. If you're a fan of college football, if you watch the Rose Bowl, there's an iconic shot going up to the stadium where you see the sign of the Rose Bowl and there's mountains behind that stadium. That is the community we are talking about. The Altadena community has really been wrecked by these fires. It's not just the Palisades. That's a terrible situation as well, but Altadena, equally as decimated, really needs some attention and some help. So if you can help, please do so. Use those links, as I mentioned. But with that in mind, I do need to take my mind off of it. I've been pretty stressed, and that's one of the beautiful things about sports. It allows us an escape that we can all relate to equally. We all experience and witness, and it's very entertaining. It's a lot of fun, and it gives us something to look forward to. That's what this video has kind of been for me the last couple days, an opportunity to take my mind off of it, have some fun, and I'm really grateful. I feel blessed that I even have anyone really that is interested in my opinion, wants to watch. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Let's get to the video, what you clicked on in order to watch. So let's get to these playoff brackets. Here is the AFC playoff picture, where I think it's a bit more obvious who is a favorite and what will happen, especially in the wild card round. I find it hard to envision a ton of upsets here. When it comes to the Bills and the Broncos, there's a narrow path for success with Denver, but they need kind of a perfect gritty game where their defense plays lights out. There's several 3-and-outs, and beyond James Cook, pretty much no one gets going. If they can shut down Cook, then maybe Josh Allen also gets limited. If he's forced to play hero ball, he might make some mistakes like he has in the past. But I don't expect that to happen. I think the Bills are by far a better team. I can actually envision Buffalo winning the Super Bowl. I can't say that with Denver. So if the Bills lose, it'd be an utter collapse. It would require kind of a fluke scenario like that loss to Denver last year where they had 12 men on the field trying to block a field goal, and it set up the game-winning kick at the last second. So unless something like that happens, then the Bills should cruise. I think they're more likely to win by 20 than find themselves in a one-possession field goal type of game. I don't think they'll be trailing in this matchup. So it's been a fun year. Good story with Peyton and Bo Nix, the rookie, but I think it ends here. I'm going to take the Bills at home. There is some weather in this game, a 20% chance of snow all throughout, and that really plays into the home field advantage of the Buffalo Bills. So both teams are very healthy. The Bills are without BAL Inspector, who's on IR, and he's a good player that might come back to haunt them later, but I think against Denver, it won't be big enough of a factor. Give me Josh Allen, who I believe will win the MVP to get the win here. The 2 seed will beat the 7 seed in Buffalo. Buffalo wins, final score 35-20. Then in Baltimore, we have the third matchup of the season between the Ravens and the Steelers. And historically, Mike Tomlin does have the better record against John Harbaugh. But the last time we saw these two teams play, it was also in Baltimore, and the Ravens really played well. For some reason, the Steelers have not been forcing any turnovers lately, and I think that is the critical aspect of this game. Without winning the turnover battle, there is no chance that the Steelers win the game, in my opinion. It might be a tight one, it might be close, but there's a reason why the Ravens are 9.5-point favorites. I think the Ravens are by far a better team, and even without Zay Flowers, they should cruise to victory. The Steelers do not scare me at this time in the year. They've started off well for many seasons now. They get to 9-10 wins, but in the playoffs in late December and January, it just doesn't happen. They've lost a lot of playoff games as far as I can remember. It's been like 2016 since they last won a playoff game. It's been a long time for Mike Tomlin. So not going to trust Russell Wilson, not when you have a elite playmaker like Lamar on the opposite side of the field. Even if he has to rely on Tylan Wallace and Rashad Bateman and Nelson Aguilar in the passing game, I still think he'll be fine. Isaiah likely will step up. I think Justice Hill has a big game. And you know Derrick Henry will show up as well. As long as they don't fumble it away, the Ravens should win comfortably over the Steelers. I think the Ravens win, final score 28-17. I think they win by more than 10 points. But on Saturday afternoon, probably the more competitive game in the AFC, the Chargers travel to Houston to take on the Texans, the 4-5 seed matchup. And I'm definitely taking my Chargers here. It's been a long time coming, but Justin Herbert finally gets his first playoff win. I have not seen enough from the Texans offense to trust them. Maybe if they still had Diggs, maybe if they still had Tank Dell, I'd be a bit more interested in them, but they've really let us down. And historically, CJ Stroud never beats a Harbaugh brother, whether it's against Michigan in college, Jim Harbaugh had his number, and we saw on Christmas, he had a hard time against the John Harbaugh Ravens. They were held to only 2 points, and that was a safety. Nothing happened on offense. So I think that the Chargers defense really steps up here. I think they play very well, and their offense is underrated. I think they'll also really get out to an early lead and control time of possession. Their O-line and D-line are way better, in my opinion, than the Texans on both sides of the ball. So the offensive line struggles have really correlated with the problems for Stroud this season, why he's had a big sophomore slump, and I don't think it works out. I think the end of the road is here. The Texans lose, Chargers advance, Herbert gets a win. Final score 24-17. So in the AFC Divisional Round, I have the Chargers advancing to take on the Chiefs at Arrowhead. And then on the other side of the bracket, we have the Bills and Ravens playing each other in Buffalo. I think in Kansas City, it'd be a bit foolish to bet against the Chiefs. While it's always possible, the Chargers in division know them very well. I think based on where they were last year at this point, they've made so many improvements. It's kind of shocking how good they look. I think it's the end of the road. It's been a great season, more than I could have asked for, honestly, and I'm really excited if they make it this far. The Chargers are going to be a force to be reckoned with for the coming years. A solid, decade plus if Harbaugh and Herbert stay together. So love what I'm seeing from the Chargers, but I don't think it's enough. I think the Chiefs off a bye at home are too tough to beat. Maybe they're going to require a doink field goal, just like they did earlier in the season when they beat the Chargers at home in that second game, but I don't think it happens again. I think the Chiefs cruise, and it won't be that competitive. I think the final score will be 27-20. I think the Chiefs will win here. They will advance to the AFC Championship game once again. Then on the opposite side, a really entertaining game between the Bills and Ravens, and I think both players are capable of deserving that MVP this year. I think it will go to Josh Allen, mainly out of fatigue for Lamar Jackson. Lamar's won it twice. Last year it happened, and maybe he gets it again, but I do think this is the year where the voters do lean in favor of Josh Allen. They're one of the only teams to beat the Chiefs starters this year, and that does count for something. They have the better seed as well. So I do think Josh Allen doesn't have as much help as Lamar, and that's why he'll win MVP. But head-to-head, I think that's why the Ravens will win. Derrick Henry always steps up in this matchup, and if Zay Flowers returns, that's the weapon they need to really put them over the top where it matters most. So I think it won't be as lopsided as the first matchup between these two. I believe it was week 4. The Ravens won 35-10. That game was in Baltimore, though. This one in Buffalo would be a lot closer. So perhaps the weather's a factor, but I think defense is really the deciding factor. And the Ravens defense has really stepped up lately. They started off the year terribly, but since trading for Tre'Davious White and really clamping down in the secondary, they are not an easy matchup anymore. So Ravens defense, I think, steps up. I will take the Ravens on the road over the Bills. I think they have a more complete roster, and they are the better team. They will win for the second time this season. Final score, it's a shootout, 38-35. So that means in the AFC Championship, we're getting a rematch of week 1, where the Chiefs hosted the Ravens, and if not for Isaiah Likely stepping out of bounds, we may have gotten a 2-point conversion and a Ravens win. But I think this team has really come a long way since the opening of the season. Their defense is way better, and I think both running backs, not just Derrick Henry, but Justice Hill, are so well integrated into this offense. It's a nightmare to handle. Lamar will be the best player on the field. I know that the Chiefs are tough to beat. They're probably the betting favorites, and it feels odd to bet against them. I did pick them to make the Super Bowl back in August, but I'm so tired of watching them win. And there's actually an interesting video I watched a few weeks ago about the curse of 15 wins. If it continues, then the Chiefs at 15-2 are not destined to hoist the trophy this year. So let's pray for it. I think everyone watching this game will be on the side of Baltimore. I'm going to pick them to win. It's not going to be an easy path to victory, but it is possible. And just like that first game, it probably comes down to a 1-point margin, maybe a 2-point conversion is what they need to get the dub. It might even go into overtime. Wouldn't shock me at all. So I'm going to call upset. I'm going to take the number 3 seed Ravens to beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Lamar finally gets over the hump and finally makes a Super Bowl. Ravens win. Final score 30-27. So the Ravens are my pick to make it to the final game. Now let's pivot to the NFC and see who their opponent will be, because the NFC I think is completely up for grabs. You could legitimately talk me into any of these teams making it to the final round. Maybe not the Commanders. It'd be a pretty impressive path for them with a rookie to make it that far, but they played really well. It wouldn't shock me if they won 1 or 2 games and at least got to the championship game with Jaden Daniels, but I'm not going to expect that. I think in that 3-6 matchup, I do think the Bucs are a bit better equipped to handle business. I think they have more experience. There's more veterans on this roster. And historically, the Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury coaching in the playoff picture has never really paid off too well. Like Dan Quinn with the Falcons found a way to choke even the Super Bowl. And then Cliff Kingsbury, when he made the playoffs with Kyler Murray, they completely collapsed in the wildcard round. So I think it's a great story. While it'll be a close game, I could see them winning. I'm not going to bet on it. I'm going to take the home team, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in this game. It's going to be a close one, but I think Baker toughs it out. And although they have Marshawn Lattimore covering Mike Evans, usually at home, Mike Evans never gets torched and completely shut down by Lattimore. If anything, I think he'll be fine. And I think Bucky Irving will be the major player of this game, the biggest playmaker on the field. It really shows Bucky Irving will dominate, and the Bucs' run defense will also completely limit Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. So unless Jaden Daniels puts forth a miraculous Superman level performance, I think the Bucs will win. I think they have too many pieces. Their run game will control the time of possession, and the Bucs at home advance to the second round. Give me the Tampa Bay Bucs over the Commanders. But that game really could go either way, and the score will be close. It'll be a one-possession victory, but in my opinion, the Tampa Bay Bucs win 27-23. In the 2-7 matchup, I was kind of waiting for the status on Jalen Hurts. Now it's confirmed he was full in practice, and he is good to go. Jalen Hurts will play in this game. Without him, there's a chance that the Packers could win, but the Packers without Christian Watson, without that deep threat element, are not quite the same offense. Maybe Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs have the game of their life, but I think they'd have to rely heavily on Josh Jacobs, and the Eagles defense, whether it's in the secondary or against the run, have been so good this season. I trust them a bit more. They have the better roster, the more experience, and they should win this game, especially with Hurts against Jordan Love, who's been inconsistent this season. I would expect the Eagles to advance. It'd be pretty disappointing if they cannot beat the Packers, but the Packers will find a way to make it interesting. I think they've struggled to start off hot, and if they win the coin toss and they choose to receive the ball, it's possible if they play well on defense, after the first quarter, they have a 14-point lead and never look back by running the ball with Jacobs. I think that's the only path for them to win. They need to get out early and by a lot, and then just find a way to hold them back on defense. So I don't expect that to happen. It's possible, but I wouldn't bet on it. If anything, I think the Eagles get out to their early lead, and the Packers are the ones trying to climb back and fight their way to victory, but not going to bet on it. I am going to bet on the Eagles to win. And at the moment, they're 5.5-point favorites, but I think it'll be closer than that. I think it'll be more of like a field goal type of game. I would bet on the Packers to cover 5.5 points in the playoffs is a lot, but I'm picking the Eagles to win. Final score 31-28. If Christian Watson was healthy, I might actually be compelled to take the upset, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to trust the Eagles to get the dub. Then the last game of the weekend would be the Rams hosting Minnesota, but because of the fires in LA, this game was moved to Arizona, and they lose a significant amount of home field advantage. Maybe the crowd's like closer to 50-50, if anything. I do expect the Vikings fans to travel well for this one. So that could be a factor that sways it, but I think overall, Sean McVay kind of has Kevin O'Connell's number. They beat the Vikings earlier this season, and they rested in Week 18. The Vikings did not. They lost, and it cost them. I think having to travel is really rough here for Sam Darnold. If he was playing at home, I might trust him a little bit more, but historically, the Vikings have terrible success in the playoffs. They require Stephon Diggs miraculously not getting tackled in order to win a playoff game. So I wouldn't trust them. Even when they were 13-4, won the division a few years ago, they hosted the Giants and lost to Daniel Jones. So I don't trust them against Sean McVay with extra rest. I think the Stafford-Puka connection will be way too tough to stop. And although Blake Corum is unavailable, Kyron Williams will play lights out himself. So I'm going to trust the Rams. I think the Vikings could keep it close, but there's also a scenario where Darnold really collapses. Sean McVay was able to beat Darnold last year with Carson Wentz in Week 18. So McVay understands this matchup. I think he'll have a very good game plan dialed up, and I would expect the Rams to win even on the road at Arizona. I think the neutral field keeps it in their favor just barely. but I think they'll get the win. I think they have the better overall roster, more experience. They've been here before and won a ring. I think they'll beat the Vikings, who still have limited playoff experience overall on the roster. So a fun season for Minnesota, but they've kind of overperformed, and I think the loss to Detroit kind of sealed it. I don't trust them to win the playoffs consistently. So give me the Rams here. A very tight one. Might go into overtime, but I trust Sean McVay to find a way. Give me the Rams over Minnesota. Final score 33-30. So in the NFC, I'm expecting every single favorite that's playing at home with the higher seed to get the win. And technically the Rams are 2.5-point underdogs, and that's really the only upset I have against the spread this week. But I think the higher seeds are there for a reason, and with that home field advantage, they usually will get the dub in those matchups. So that's a very interesting matchup between the Lions and the Rams in the divisional round. We saw that in week 1. It went into overtime, and Dave Montgomery and the offensive line just dominated the Rams late in that game. And then we also saw this game last season in the wildcard round. The Rams went into Detroit and lost as well. So the Lions have had their number. They've played them really tough. And if this game was in SoFi, perhaps I would take the Rams. But it's in Detroit. I think the home field advantage is crazy. The Lions are so hungry for a Super Bowl. Those fans are going to be a nightmare to deal with. Stafford and the silent count will have some hiccups. So I'm going to take Detroit. Although their defense is banged up, they can still really play with anyone. And they've really impressed me in the secondary. They've had a lot of interceptions lately. Not something I expected entering the year from their defense. So like what I'm seeing from Detroit, I've been underestimating them a little bit, expecting them to kind of fall off the last month or so, and it just hasn't happened. They've proved me wrong, and I think at this point, I have to stop betting against them. Give me Dan Campbell and the Lions to get it done. Jared Goff beats his former team once again, and this one may be like a blowout. I could see the added rest and time to prepare really helping out Detroit, and if they get Dave Montgomery back, I think it's completely lights out for the Rams. Final score, Lions win 34-30. But on the opposite side of the bracket, this is not a matchup that the Eagles want. The Bucs have given them problems year over year for the last several seasons. Other than that time they made the Super Bowl, oftentimes the Bucs are the ones who are knocking them out of the playoffs. So this game will be very, very interesting. I could envision Baker finding a way, and the Bucs have a lot of experience in the playoffs themselves. But I think that the Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley combo will be too much for them. I think if they limit Mike Evans at all, Bucky Irving won't be able to completely torch them, given the time possession probably favors the Eagles running behind Saquon Barkley. So going to be a shootout for sure, but the Eagles, I think their defense overall is better, and I would trust Vic Fangio a little bit more than Todd Bowles. Maybe Sirianni is not the coach to bet on. There could be a lot of noise and a lack of preparation that wouldn't shock me, but overall the Eagles usually get it done, and the fact that Jalen Hurts is healthy is kind of the main thing that I need to know in order to keep trusting them. The Eagles have played so well this season, it would shock me if they did not make the NFC Championship game. So again, I'm taking the higher seeded team that's playing at home, but I really think they're just the better overall roster. And if the Bucs win here, it'd be a major disappointment for the Eagles. I think they would fire their head coach if they don't win this game in the second round. So give me the Eagles. A lot is on the line here, but I think Saquon puts them over the top. A bit more of a defensive battle, but the Eagles tough it out and get the dub. Final score 27-21, which sets up a great game in the NFC Championship. These two teams have felt like they're on a collision course all year long to match up in the playoffs. They've played so well all throughout the year, and it really wouldn't shock me if we saw like 80 points overall on the scoreboard. If both teams cracked 50, I think that's also possible as well. The Lions are going to be so hungry, and there's a chance that their defense will be even healthier at this point and really clamp down. I also think that Sirianni could be a problem. There might be a lot of noise in the locker room heading into this matchup. The Philadelphia media is not going to make this easy for this team. So with all the expectations brewing, I could see them fumble it. And maybe it's the Lions who fumble it. Maybe they go for it on fourth down. It doesn't work out. This one is going to be a barn burner, and it can really go either way. Wouldn't be shocked at all if it goes into overtime. That's what I'm going to predict. Lions win. Final score 39-33. Defense will not be the calling card in that game. So that's what I'm predicting. The Lions make it out of the NFC. They'll represent the conference for the first time ever, it feels like, and they will be going up against the Ravens in the Super Bowl. I really hope that it's not the Chiefs, but I absolutely believe that the Ravens can make it there. I think they will, and I think the Ravens are going to win. Historically, Lamar Jackson owns the NFC. He's almost never losing against that conference, and in the Super Bowl, I think that is going to help him a lot. A team that doesn't face him that often doesn't quite know how to approach him and defend him, and it might be too much for the Lions and that banged up defense that they have. If you recall, last season, the Lions went into Baltimore and had one of their worst ever games in the Dan Campbell era. They only put up like 6 points on offense. They lost like 35-6 in that one. So I think it will be closer. I don't think it'll be that much of a demolishing by the Ravens defense, but I think the Ravens have the better team overall. I'm going to take Baltimore. I think it's their year, and I think if they beat the Chiefs, they know they can beat anyone. They will not be hesitant at all, and Lamar with Derrick Henry will just be too much to stop. Give me the Ravens. I think Lamar hoists the Lombardi for the first time. Maybe the Lions get it done. It wouldn't shock me either. I think either team can win, but because it's the first time they've ever been there, the moment might just be too much. Perhaps a critical execution on fourth down just doesn't work out, and they lose possession when they need just a field goal to get the win. So might go into overtime as well. Wouldn't shock me, but I'm going to take the Ravens to win. Final score 31-30, a narrow victory, but I'm going to take the team that's been there before historically to get it done. The organization that knows what it takes will find a way. John Harbaugh's experience in this situation, I think, will be the deciding factor, and the Ravens will not shoot themselves in the foot. Give me the Baltimore Ravens to win the Super Bowl over the Lions. I think it will happen. So that's my pick. It's about time Lamar gets a trophy. So although he doesn't win the regular season MVP, he will win the Super Bowl MVP, and I think he really cements his status as a clear first ballot Hall of Famer. Getting this Super Bowl is the last thing he needs on the resume to really check all the boxes. So love that. For Lamar, if it happens, it'd be really fun. Honestly, after watching them against the Chargers in person, I can't get that fourth down play call out of my mind. It looked like they were bluffing at the 2-minute warning, and they converted on their own like 15, drove the length of the field. That really flipped that game. And ever since that point, I think the Ravens have been playing with so much confidence, so much poise, and on both sides of the ball, I think they're a very complete team. I think the Ravens will win the Super Bowl this year. So that's my pick. We'll see what happens, but I feel pretty confident about it, and it's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait for the wild card round. Going to be a lot of fun overall. So enjoy watching the games yourself and stay safe out there. As a reminder, if you do still want to donate and you forgot to do that earlier, hit the link in the description, head over there and donate to any of those families' GoFundMe pages who really need some of our help at this point in time. So please go ahead and donate, but I'll see you next time. My name's Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.